Okay, and I think we are live. So, welcome everyone to the finals of the Devon Autumn Grand Prix, the final event of 2020. It's been a long year, and we've reached the finals of this event. Four players, two incredibly exciting matches lined up for us. I'm your host, Tom Thorpe. I'm joined as always by my co commentator, a man who once told me that if you've not got anything good to say, don't say anything at all. It's Dr. Tim Paulden. Good evening, Tim.
That's the best one so far, Tom. But
There's not been much competition.
there hasn't. There hasn't. Good evening. Good evening, everyone who's watching on the stream.
Oh dear, sorry. That's been saved up for quite a while. I thought I'd save it for the finals. Yes, that's how sad I am. Tim, we've got two fantastic matches coming up. We've got the open final between Jack Rudd and John Underwood at 8 o'clock, and we've got David Holmes and Steve Dean in the major coming up in just a few minutes' time. Did we want to just quickly give a preview of the Open before we then start talking about the live games that come in the major? So, Jack Rudd against John Underwood, a rematch from the
Mm.
Spring Grand Prix. What are your thoughts coming into this one?
I mean, Jack is obviously a really tough opponent for anyone. He's
Mm,
been dominating the early stage of the Grand Prix, where it was sort of run over 6 weeks.
yeah,
I think he ended up with a perfect score in the end. Did he
he did.
manage?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
managed the perfect score,
he managed
which
the
is
perfect score of 36,
scary.
which it is scary. I mean, you'd back Jack against almost anyone in fast games, and that's what we've got tonight. So
Mm,
um, it's going to be an uphill battle for John.
yeah,
Having said that, if we think back to the spring
yeah,
when we did similar sort of commentary around then, I know that John actually had some winning positions
he did.
against Jack. So I don't know if he's maybe gone back and had a look at what worked then in terms of getting into a better
Mm,
position and sort of where it went wrong. I think it will be an uphill battle, but
yeah.
I would expect John to pick up a point or maybe two. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it was 4-0 in the end to Jack in the spring, and that was very, I wouldn't say it was flattering, but it was certainly not a reflection of sort of where the positions went.
That's right.
Just before the stream, I had a look at some of the stats leading into this. They've played 28 games against each other over all different time controls. It's 22 wins to Jack, 3 draws, and 3 losses to Jack, so 3 wins to John. But two of those losses have come very recently within the last few weeks. So John has had the better of Jack in some of the recent tournaments. So we could see some upsets here,
Yeah.
and they've been in our Mellow Monday and Friday Night Blitzes. So we definitely could see a match, but as you say, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. So, in terms of prediction, did you want to give a prediction on what you thought maybe the score would be? I've made some predictions for today.
Have you? Have you?
I have, yes.
So I think John. I mean, John's going to come out swinging. I think.
Yeah.
I would. I'm going to say it goes to Jack over the 4 games, but I'm going to say 2.5, 1.5.
2.5, 1.5.
Yeah.
Wow. That's going to sound like a thrilling match. I've gone 3-1. I think it's going to be all decisive games. I think, as you say, I think John's going to go for it, and I feel that's not going to cause many draws. But we'll see how it goes. That's going to get kicked off at 8 o'clock. Jack is currently with us in the chat, so we shall say
Right.
no more
Absolutely.
about about how about all of John's plans to demolish Jack this evening. I mean, hi Jack. Um, oh, right. Sorry, I just needed to adjust something there. So we've now got if we got the games going yet. We've not quite got the games on yet. So let's actually talk about the major match that's coming up. David Holmes against Steve Dean. David, the reigning champion, the reigning
Mm.
major Grand Prix champion. Steve Dean, the reigning autumn mini Swiss champion.
Yes,
So two players who have done exceptionally well over the whole period, really. I think both of them have been very consistent, certainly
they
in the
have.
Grand Prix. Steve in the autumn has just seemingly been playing and winning in everything he possibly can. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this one. Talk us through what your thoughts are coming in.
I mean, yeah, as you say, we've got two previous champions. Steve, more recently, this last week in the mini Swiss, but they both finished as the top two in the under 160s.
Yeah.
So we have sort of 1 versus 2 here. So it really couldn't be any tighter. I think one statistic that Steve emailed me,
Yeah.
and I checked, was 22 games between them, and of those 22, there's been 16 draws and 3 wins each.
Wow.
So So that's yeah, that's
Th-
quite
That's amazing.
quite quite, yeah.
What
So
what what isn't so amazing, just to interject, is that
of
we're
course.
starting out with a London. That's something that's not so amazing. Um, sorry, carry on, Tim.
So yeah, I would expect that, and this isn't to say the games are going to be dull because you can have very hard fought draws, of course.
Mm,
But among those 16, I mean, there would be, quite a few games that were maybe swingy and then just ended up petering out as a draw in the ending or something.
yeah,
So it wouldn't surprise me at all if we had two or three draws in total out of these four games. But
yeah,
it's really hard to separate the players, I think.
yeah. And in terms of predictions, this could be the controversial one, I think. Is it going to be the reigning Grand Prix champion, or is it going to be the mini Swiss champion? Who are you thinking?
I think it's going to go to a tie break. I think I would not be surprised at all if this is 2-2.
Yeah,
Obviously, it could go either way, and at this fast time control, anything can happen. But
yeah.
I'm gonna back 2-2.
Excellent. Well, I've gone 2.5, 1.5 to Steve. I
Oh, okay.
think with Steve, how he's been playing in everything, and just how he's certainly in the mini Swiss last Wednesday, just his composure going through that. Just to me, I think he's just going to edge it. But I think it's going to be a very close match. And as you say, I would not be surprised if this goes to tie breaks. Just to give you an update on what they're doing. So they are playing two games of 9+3, which is our slower time control, and then two games at 5+2. And then if it's tied 2-2 in tie breaks, then we go more 5+2 games until we have a winner or until one of us collapses. Not sure what will happen first.
So now that they've started the game, I mean, I can
Yep.
I can say a couple of words about what they sent me
Yes, please
um,
do.
in terms of their strategy going into this game. So um, it's the quite interesting contrast in what they've said. So um, David, so the player of the black pieces, Gas Head 4,
Yeah.
is going to try and he hasn't done it yet, to be fair, but he wants to surprise Steve with something a bit different or wacky
Okay.
at some point in the match. That was his statement about the match. And Steve is going to trundle out the London and Caracan as usual and see what develops. He says, and I think this is absolutely right, that David, so Gashead 4, has got this attacking streak,
Yeah.
and Steve, cash only, the white pieces here,
Yeah.
is saying he's going to try and dull down each game and aim for a boring middle game or a technical ending. So
Where have I heard that before from Steve?
that's right. That's right. And it's a strange one, isn't it? Because if you like playing endings,
Yeah.
and I think Steve does, I think part of his success recently has been this ability to get into an ending where there's a slight edge,
Yeah.
and to sort of grind it down. And I guess the other feature for people who haven't been following the stream so far is he tends to get short of time.
Yes.
Um, and so I don't know whether David is going to play into that at all. I mean, he may be sort of thinking, well, Steve's going to get short of time, so let me try and avoid complicating it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and make the game last. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
so
this
so
is
this is quite,
quite
yeah.
yeah. No, I was about to say this is quite a forcing move actually. This E4. I'm surprised Steve's played this early. It's slightly surprising in the way he's played the London before. This move obviously threatens to push the pawn to e5 to fork both of these pieces. So black, I think, usually takes this, but this is very early to get e4 in this
Yes.
structure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a move that white wants to play, but usually white castles and plays rook e1 first. Um,
I mean, Steve knows a lot of theory. It's worth saying that as well.
mm,
I think in fact it was John in his preview that said Steve is a really difficult opponent to crack
yeah,
because of all this theory that he knows, and that's been sort of evident throughout the competition as well. So
yeah.
yeah, he will have sort of prepared this to some extent, I imagine, or will be familiar with it. So
Mm. Yeah, and it's interesting again. I mean, with the bishop coming out to d6, there's obviously threats of black taking this bishop, and so perhaps one of his ideas, which Jack's just mentioned as well, is actually to allow him to take with the h pawn and allow his rook to be. If there is an exchange on g3,
yes,
the rook will then open up. So actually, delaying castling may help that,
yeah, yeah,
which is a good idea. This bishop now looking very nice on this diagonal, so you probably want to play a move like queen c7 or bishop b7 to obviously guard the knight. Um, I don't know. Somehow I like this for
Mhm.
white. I feel like this opening up of the centre and this bishop on e4 just seems to give white a small advantage here, to me
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. I think, yeah, I think white. This idea of dropping the bishop back to g3 and sort of if black takes it, taking back with h, I
Hmm.
think is a nice idea, isn't it? I mean, in this sort of system, white has always got sort of an eye on getting a kingside attack going.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, it's only going to help that. So I'm just thinking whether there's any sort of tactical things we need to be aware of. That maybe not immediately, but
No.
over the next few moves.
No, I'm not
This
sure.
sort of standoff on c5. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, it feels like there's enough defence on c5 at the moment. This move queen a4 starting to now put the pressure on this knight on c6, which I think is probably a good idea actually.
Yes.
Um, just a quick check that a move like knight takes d4 doesn't work. I don't think it does because you're obviously defending c2 with the queen. So it's you just play bishop takes b7 if this knight
Yeah.
moves. I was just looking to try and
Yep.
exploit this loose bishop, but I don't think it quite works here.
Yeah.
But always the things that you want to be looking out for. One thing I would mention, you mentioned that Steve often gets into time trouble. But look at the times. Steve
Yeah.
still having 7.5 minutes left, whereas Gashead already down to 5 minutes. And I think this is one thing when I've played David before, is that sometimes his time can also dwindle. So we could see some time scrambles in this match.
Yeah. Yeah. The other sort of factor here, we were talking about sort of this idea of taking on c5, and previously you could take back with the bishop.
Yep,
Um, that's not. I mean, it's kind of a theme in the London system sometimes. After this move that he's played, Queen C7,
yep,
that you can't take back with the bishop on C5 because bishop takes queen.
yep.
So whether that gives White anything, um, sort of
Yeah,
remains to be seen. But yeah, it's a way of causing a weakness, and he has taken it.
it's sort of giving the black these sort of split pawns, which aren't usually too bad, but they sometimes are a bit of a weakness. It gives white's obviously got this 3v2
Yeah.
majority on the queen side, which of course could lead in an end game to white having a small advantage because white would be able to create this pass pawn on the queen side. Um, but as you say, is white going to be able to exploit these
Mm.
isolated pawns at the moment? Not straight away. There doesn't seem to be anything immediate. Um, I think here I'd probably decide to castle. I think
Mm.
maybe now the position has sort of given black this weakness, maybe you start thinking more positionally than I might attack if he trades on g3. But maybe that's just my
Yep.
interpretation of it.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't.
And
I mean, we can also play. I mean, we could play Rook D1, couldn't we? You
yep,
could and put pressure on D6, which of course is this idea, isn't it? That if you'd taken the other way, taken earlier, Black might have had Bishop takes C5, and now he's been
yeah,
forced
to split these
to
pawns and
split the pawns and weaken the structure a bit. Um, could you castle queenside? could you put even more? I mean, it looks. I'm not sure if it's the kind of move that Steve will be up for here.
mm,
Um,
I feel like sort of
it's probably
castling queenside, it feels like it just helps black because the benefit of having these split pawns is it opens up this b file. This now a semi-open b file, so that black, if you put the king on c1, you
yeah
can sort of imagine that there may be some pressure on the b file, and you sort of would rather your king on g1. I just think that any kingside attack here isn't really going to achieve a lot.
no,
It's because you're never going to want to play a move like h4 to push this pawn forwards because then black will take on g3, especially if you're forced to take with the f pawn, because that will weaken the structure. One
yeah
thing Ossots just mentioned in the chat is a Greek gift sacrifice a potential here, and that's something that I hadn't really considered. I don't think it's quite here yet because I'm not sure you're
mm,
able to. If you play bishop takes h7, king takes, and then knight g5 check, which is your usual Greek gift, you're not able to get the queen over to h5 to
it's yeah.
try and checkmate. But it's an idea to
It's,
look
it's
out
it's the
for.
fact it's h4, isn't it? So often with this Greek gift, the queen comes to h5,
Yeah,
and then when the knight comes to g5, you're sort of hitting h7 and f7. So that
yeah,
if the rook moves, you've got queen takes f7, and I think that's sort of what the follow up normally, isn't it? But with the queen on h4, it feels like it certainly looks like some of the ideas aren't there.
yeah. Yeah.
And
And with the queen on c7 as well, guarding f7, even if it was on h5, it's possible this king would actually be able to escape. But it's certainly something that the white will have to look out for. And I'm wondering whether Steve's actually taking the time here to look at these sacrifices and try and come up with a plan. I don't mind him spending a lot of time here. I think this is a crucial decision in
yeah,
how he goes forward in the game.
yeah, I think if he was to castle kingside here,
Mm,
then it sort of feels like Black would be taking on g3,
mm,
and at that point, because you're no longer opening the h file um, in a threatening way.
yeah.
Um, so it sort of feels like if White wants to, maybe this is what Steve's thinking. If he's going to castle kingside, should he take on d6 first to avoid causing this slight weakness of the structure? He's
Ooh,
gone
he's
for
gone
it.
for it.
Well done,
So is he
Ocelot. What a
is
call.
he is he
What's
going
he
to go
see?
queen h4 check first then instead? I think the king's just going to escape. I think this is the problem I can see. So if you take king takes
You
h7,
must take it, otherwise Queen h4. So
queen
I think, is that right?
yeah,
Yes, Queen
if you do
h4, Queen h5. Yeah. So
yeah. So king takes h7, queen h4 check. I think black can get away with dropping back because if you go knight g5, then you move this rook away to give your king an escape square via f8. If you play queen h7 check, you can then go king f8. I think the king escapes here.
it's what White gets for it though, right? Because he's going to pick up at least two pawns, I think. Right. So he'll pick up h7 already, and he'll pick
Yep,
up g7 when the Queen gets in.
that's true. That's true.
So yeah, yeah. I mean,
Fireworks.
this isn't keeping it dull.
Yeah.
What's,
No.
but yeah, yeah. I mean, great idea, and yeah, put pressure on Black with 3 minutes left.
And a great call. I mean, Steve was obviously spending a lot of time here, and you could have played something more solid. And okay, the engine evaluation has gone towards black because there will be some computer defense. But how easy is it going to be
Yeah.
for a human to actually be able to solve the problems here? I think
Yep.
this is going to be tricky.
So yeah, so we're going to see the Queen and Knight combine.
Mm.
We're going to see the Queen come into h7 with check once the rook moves.
Yeah,
And it feels like we're going to see King f8, Queen h8. The King
yeah.
has to go to e7. You then take on
On
g7,
g7, yeah.
and at that point, if I'm visualizing it correctly, you're hitting f7 twice. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, because
So
the
so
king
so
will
it's
have
black.
run to e7, yeah.
So what has White got left? So he's I mean, the reason it felt early, and I think your instinct was that it felt early as well, because
Mm.
there's like White doesn't have any of the rooks playing yet,
No.
um, and his king being in the centre isn't so much of a worry. But
No, I mean Jack's mentioned something in the chat which I can't visualize exactly how it would go, but looking at moves like queen, if the queen can get to e5 with check and sort of come to the defense of something on the king side, I can't see exactly any specific lines where that would happen, but you could see that the king on e1 would be a problem
yeah,
if there would be any checks to sort of for
I,
black to be able to defend on the king's side.
I mean, Black can't play King h8, so I'm not quite sure why he's taking. I mean, yeah, taking so long to capture it.
Yeah, it
So
was
yeah,
almost instant, really. It needed to be. If you leave the bishop there, you get into the same troubles, but you're not a bishop up, right?
yeah. So
Um,
here we come. Right. So as we expected, so the rook's going to go somewhere, and
yeah,
then we're going to see. Then the only logical follow-up is to check, but he's put it on e8. Okay.
okay. I don't think it makes much of a difference because I feel
It's
like
probably going to move back. Yeah.
it'll probably move back to f8 once white's taken the g pawn. It feels like rook f8 to defend the f7 square is probably
Yeah.
The right thing. But then white maybe can just consider. I mean, as a long-term plan, just moving the h pawn up the board
Yeah.
and ask black the question: what are you going to do to stop me promoting it?
Yeah. So he doesn't have to. Yeah, he doesn't have to play Queen h7 straight away, does he? He's got, for example, if you're stopping, if you just keep this tension, if you like, at the moment,
Yeah.
Black can't move something to e7. He can't play bishop e7, for example, or queen e7 to try and
Nope.
defend, because then he gets mated. So
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
the king gets locked in those positions. You can play
yeah,
knight e7, but
which is possibly why rookie. I mean, rook e8 didn't feel quite right, and I think you were saying b8 maybe before, because it's sort of taking this this square away in this
I,
particular line.
I think I felt D8. I think the rooks feel like they want to be placed on D8 and B8 in this position.
Yeah.
Just to be on the semi-open files. It's pretty crude. Castles queenside. I think
Oh,
this is
we
a
like
nice
that.
move. I think
Yeah,
this is a nice move.
yeah.
This is so not in Steve's style. Like,
No.
in his plan coming into this was solid endgame, and we've got into this really
So,
interesting position with the times starting to get short.
so as we said before, so black can't retreat the bishop because it's mate. Yeah. So you can't
Yeah,
retreat to e7. Similarly, can't retreat to f8. Yeah.
yeah. E5.
e5. e5. What's
Why is the engine
what's yeah?
switched?
What's the scene?
What have I missed? What have we missed? I'm trying to think if there's something with a rook takes d6 somewhere, but I can't.
Yeah. I
Just
can't
play
see. I can't see an immediate.
no. Play a move like queen h. So play queen h7 and then queen h8.
Yeah.
Take on g7.
Yeah.
Then you're hitting f7. I'm cheating. So Jack has posted this line, which we may see, which is queen h8, king
Yeah.
e7, and then take on g7. And then if if rook f8, then you can play the move knight e4, which puts another attacker onto d6.
Oh, that's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, and we could be coming into this. We could be seeing this knight e4, of course, attacking d6 and attacking f6
Yeah.
as well to play
Just,
queen
just,
f6.
just a note here. There's if king d8, for example, try and run away, I think you can just take on d6 and then on f7. So
Yes,
which
that's a nice
wins the
tactic.
queen. So yeah, obviously you're getting sort of pulverized in any of those lines. So yeah,
Yeah, this is
goodness me, this is hard. This is hard.
this is very hard, especially with only 50 seconds on the clock. I think this is so difficult for Black to play under this time pressure. From a practical point of view, I think Steve's decision was excellent to go for this. Just because you're getting the two pawns, I'd not appreciated that when you get the G7 pawn, actually it's sort of you've got two pawns for this piece and Black's still got problems to solve. In a
Yeah.
long play game, this probably wasn't the right idea, but in these quicker games, this could have been an excellent decision, and Steve could take the lead here 1-0.
Mm. Yeah, that
Here's Rook F8.
rook f8 feels like just by elimination.
Yeah,
Um,
but now Knight E4, as Jack is saying, is this double threat. It's a horrible move. Really nasty move for Black
so
to meet.
so yes, with the idea that you've got queen f6 coming at the end.
Yeah, you got Queen F6, which would add another attacker to D6.
Bishop's just got no moves.
The bishop's just completely stuck in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, Knight E4 does threaten to take this bishop because, whilst Black has two defenders, one of them's the queen, so you don't get the equal trades that you would want. You just have this total dominance on the dark squares. And you can even play bishop h4 check at the right moment if you needed to on the attack. And knight e4 played. Knight e4 played.
Well done to. Did you say it was Ocelot in the
No, this
chat?
was Charlie Keane. This is Charlie Keane.
Charlie King. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, this was Jack. Sorry, Jack said this. Charlie was saying rook takes bishop, which again is on the right lines, but Jack posted this one.
I was saying earlier, was it not Ocelot that suggested this Greek gift?
Yes, no, that was Ocelot.
So
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations on. I mean,
Mhm.
a great sort of chess intuition there because yeah, it looked too early, didn't it? It
Did
somehow
look
looked
too
too
early.
early, but this is just an absolute
Yeah.
carnage now.
And now if the king drops back, now you can play knight takes d6 because you've added this third attacker in,
Yeah.
and this is all falling apart now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
After knight takes d6, if you don't take it with the rook, if you play a move like king d, well, the only other move is king
You
d7,
you just take on b7 with check even, or win the queen. I mean,
or win the queen with knight b5. Yeah, it's
they're all.
and as I think we were saying, like practically, this may have been an excellent decision. This is something that the engines sort of don't take into account at all. Is sort of actually how difficult a position is to play for a human under the time pressure, and these practical decisions are far more important, really, sometimes than the engine evaluation.
Please tell me Steve's not considering queen.
He's considering queen takes, isn't
Yeah.
he?
I think you just take with the rook and double up, don't you? And
Yeah.
this is just absolutely
Yeah.
horrendous. Because there's. I'm
You
just
can
thinking,
even you can even play rook e1 and put pressure on the e file, right? I mean that almost feels better than doubling up. Um,
Yeah.
just put
Yeah.
pressure on that e pawn.
I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking that black is completely tied down, so he's taken with the queen.
He's
Okay.
taken with the queen.
Yeah.
So material wise, let's just take a recap. So material wise, white is an exchange and 2 pawns up. So materially this is good. And with the times as they are, perhaps just simplifying it into this sort of situation is possibly the right thing to do, especially since Steve likes these end games, and obviously you like end games where you're material up as well, of
Yes,
course.
that's right. Yeah,
Something I don't have much
I think
experience
it's
with.
an interesting stylistic thing, isn't it?
Mm,
Because I mean, I think he's going to play Rook H7 here. Yeah, we go. Yeah,
yeah,
and
trade the rooks.
yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, there's obviously lots of different ways to win a game of chess, and Steve's decided to show us two of them. so,
Yeah, in the
yeah,
same game.
exactly in the same game. I mean,
Mm,
I think it's very tempting to go Rook takes D6, but
yeah,
all credit to Steve for getting into such a dominating position,
yep,
and yeah, I think
yeah.
this is just, I literally think this is just completely over. There's not even any counterplay.
No,
So
that even the time situation isn't gonna. The 3 second increment should be more than enough to convert a position like this. I think.
yeah,
There doesn't seem to be too many practical
no,
difficulties. Obviously, the knights can be a bit tricky. We've seen that before, but this bishop does a wonderful job actually of controlling all of the dark squares that this knight can go to. Um,
yeah, yeah. Can them? He's just dropped back. Yeah, that's safe, isn't it?
yeah.
I just wondered. I mean, this is very simple to win now, isn't it? It's 3 pawns, and that's that's a very
Well,
Steve
this
move.
is going into opposite coloured bishops.
Yeah,
It's 3 pawns,
would
so it
be.
will be enough. But practically, I think that was possibly a rash decision. But it should still be more than enough, clearly. But opposite coloured bishops can only save you to some degree. But
Yeah,
I don't know. This should still be quite straightforward, I think.
yeah.
But not as
I think
straightforward as when you have a rook, I think, if I'm honest.
I can, although I can completely understand why Steve's done that. As you say, to get the simplification, you are sort of there. We go. It's time out
There's a
anyway.
timeout instead.
Yeah. He's taking a sort of a very small risk by going into the opposite colour bishops,
Yeah.
but yeah, well played, Steve. I mean, what a great game. Really
Well,
exciting.
not what we were expecting at all, if we're honest. I mean, possibly David playing an aggressive game like that. You may have expected more, but this aggression from Steve from a London
Yeah,
of all openings is tremendous. It's actually one of the things I was going to say. I was thinking about this earlier, is that we've actually seen Steve play the London a lot more positionally, a lot slower normally. Whereas when I've seen you play the London, Tim, for example, you've
yeah,
obviously played it a lot more aggressively. You've certainly
yeah,
played it aggressively against me before with good success.
yeah.
So I was going to actually ask sort of the different styles of the London, how you can play it, but we've just had that demonstrated.
We
So
have. Yeah,
I didn't really need to bother asking that question because Steve demonstrated that perfectly.
yeah.
Um, and he has taken a 1-0 lead with the white pieces. Still got a long way to go in this match, so it's certainly not over for David at all. But a great start for Steve.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer your question about the London, I mean, there are so many, there's so many different ways you can play it, and I think when you see it used at the grandmaster level,
Yeah,
obviously, both white and black are extremely strong players. These sort of kingside attacks, they're sort of in the air, but they never kind of come to fruition. But
yeah,
um, I think for us mere mortals, it can really have a sting in the tail.
yeah,
That if black sort of slips up in any way or doesn't defend the king side, suddenly white's in, and yeah, we sort of saw a demonstration of that.
mm,
I think this early e4 was it sort of characterised it, didn't it? That Steve, rather than castling and building up, he made this quite early central break,
yeah. And it was
I think
utilizing
this
the
is
fact this
thematic. Yeah,
bishop was on d6, right? Because it pressures putting it puts pressure on black that he has to deal with it straight away because of this threat of e5.
yeah,
And you've seen it in games where perhaps if the bishop's gone to e7 instead, which is a slightly more modest move, a
yeah,
modest square for the bishop, then of course his e4 may not have as much potency, and that may be the decision why Steve decided to play it that way. Um, but okay, we're going into game two now. I've just had seen the chat. I was watching my friends list to see when the other game was coming up, but David sort of commending Steve on that great shot and saying he shouldn't have deviated from what he's played in the past. So,
Well,
well,
it's
let's
very
see
easy
what
to say that.
happens. Let's see what happens in the return game in the blitz portion and what surprise he's got out his sleeve. Bishop c4, a gambit in the Caracan. We're going to see f3, I think. Here we go, the fantasy variation, sort of. Well, this is more the style we were expecting from David.
I mean, Steve being a theory buff will have something against this. I'm presuming he's just going to play a reverse London. No, not quite, but it's
Without the pawn on d5, but
sure,
yes.
sure, yeah, it's yes,
Ooh, knight g5. Now Dave's playing this very, very quickly, so
mm.
I'm suspecting that this is preparation. Um, I'm assuming there's a threat of rook takes f5 or knight takes f7 and rook takes f5, putting some pressure there. I'm assuming there was some tactics going on.
And then this knight's coming to f4, isn't it? This
Yep,
is I quite like this. I think he's looked this up beforehand.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
make a lot of sense.
yep. I like this.
Yeah.
This knight's still coming into f4. But of course, white's given up a pawn for this. So if black can consolidate, then black will be a pawn up. But yeah, white's definitely got some active pieces here. A nice open f-file. This knight's doing a good job to stopping the queen from coming onto the queen side, but onto the king side rather.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
think this is exactly the right strategy for David to follow.
Mm,
Is let's try and create a bit of a instability. Is that the word?
mm,
Yeah, in the
yeah,
position, and yeah, see how Steve deals with that. I mean, Steve does a very solid pawn structure here,
yeah.
and
This
yeah,
classic Caracan structure, really, with the pawns on c6 and e6 just remaining solid. Very modest move of c3 here. Um, just solidify this pawn on d4, not rushing into any sort of attack, just saying to black, okay, I'm a pawn down, but oh well, I've got these active pieces, and you've still got to get some time to get your pieces into the right positions.
yeah,
Um, I must admit, I liked the gambit to start with, but if I'm honest, it doesn't look to me like there's enough for the pawn here. I mean, I'm pretty greedy with material at the best of times, but it just feels like black should be able to do enough here with something like knight d7, knight f6, and
yeah,
this bishop on g6 should do a good job. This pawn will probably
yeah.
come forwards, but
It's funny because I kind of get this, not quite this position, but very
mm,
close to this position in um, the Scandinavian
yeah,
quite a lot. And yeah, I'd be very happy to take black here
yeah,
now because normally you'd have almost this position, but white would have an extra pawn. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
But of course, not having the f pawn does mean that white is able to rook lift over to
yeah,
h3 or g3 or wherever. Excuse me, on the queen side. On the king side. Why do I keep calling it the queen side? I think it's because the queen's over there, and my brain's just not working.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, with black having this bishop on g6, like outside the pawn chain, I could sort of see there'd be compensation if this bishop was back on c8 or something,
yeah,
and but black's played this, ideally in terms of where's the bishop want to be. It's defending the king.
yeah.
Um, what is White's plan here to try and crack this open?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, do you play it, super sort of not safe, but sort of a bit slower and more patiently with a move like Rook AE1? Just put a bit of pressure on E6 again. Just
Yep.
slowly bring your pieces into the attack. Do you go straight for the throat with Rook F3 and start going with the Rook? Do you push the H pawn and put some pressure on the bishop here? Do you play a move like Bishop D6, force the Rook away from F8? I think there's a lot of decisions here to be made. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tricky to know exactly which way's the right way, and possibly there isn't a correct way because objectively black is probably doing quite well here, but it's just what practically is going to be the most tricky to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I think Black's plan is to play knight f6, knight 7 to f6,
Yep.
get a free hit on the queen. The queen's gonna have to move somewhere, and then I mean, I don't know whether you want to then take on f4 and move the other knight to d5. That's certainly what I'd be looking at.
Mm,
Um, it's one of those weird positions where it sort of feels like if black isn't fairly accurate, white
yep.
could build up quite a dangerous initiative. And so he's probably having a think about how best to handle this.
Mm, yeah. And just to say that I think we've got our second match just underway. Jack Rudd against John Underwood. We'll stick with the Steve Dean game for now. I think unless we wanted to come back to this when it reaches its ending. Just it's going to be difficult because Jack, as we know, plays very quickly. So I feel like these two games might end at similar times.
Yeah, we can flick between them, can't we? So
Yeah, we can
um,
flick.
yeah, how can white make life difficult here?
Yeah, it feels like there's nothing immediate. I think that's a given. I'm sure that David is looking at things on looking at sacrifices on e6 and trying to work out which of all these plans is best. I'd probably take the more patient approach, but with Rook E1, it feels to me that White, if he's going to make anything of this, needs to have all of his pieces into this attack rather.
Yep.
Um, but it feels like a move like h4 would be ideal, but the problem is after knight s7 f6, that's just going to put more defense on that h5 square, and it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
you're going to get h5 in.
No.
Um, I think black has just got a very nice setup here, and it's, as you say, it's just tricky.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of compensation, but I, I don't think it's enough. Queen g3, so this is a prophylactic way to play it, anticipating the
Yeah.
knight coming to f6. Um, so we may have to wait a little bit longer to find out what White's overall plan is going to be here.
Yep.
Does feel like rook
Yes.
coming to e1 is the way now though. Just just bring another piece in.
Yep.
Maybe put the bishop on e5, but bishop e2. Looking to march this up the board maybe.
Yeah.
I think you just take on f4. I
I
think you
I,
do what
I
you
think
say.
so there's I think Jack actually brought it up last week. This idea of
Mm,
a redundant knight that like black has two knights.
yeah,
Obviously white only has one at the moment, but they sort of both want to use d5 and they're
yeah,
sort of stumbling over each other a little bit. And there's a principle that basically says when you do that, if you can lose one of the knights
yeah,
and you can here by taking on f4, then that's often a good idea. So here, taking on f4, and then maybe even straight away moving
yeah.
the other knight to d5. White's got to keep tabs on g5,
Mm,
which is attacked by the
yeah,
queen.
yeah.
It just feels like the natural move.
Mm. And I think what's important as well is that this knight doesn't have to stay on f6 because you've got the bishop on g6 guarding h7. So it's
Yeah.
not like h7's a weakness that the knight on f6. Whoops, I'm not predicting that. Um, but yeah, it feels like because this bishop's on g6, you can utilize this knight on d5 and effectively trade this knight on f6 for the bishop on f4 to some
Yeah.
degree. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this one goes forwards. I think let's take a look at the Jack Rug game. We can't obviously forget the open section. Would obviously keep tabs on both matches at the same time. But Jack Rudd and John Underwood. John taking white in the first match. We didn't do a huge preview on this, so it might be worth now that they're playing to have a little preview into what their thoughts were as we see Caracan defense against an English sort of.
Yeah, so John was white. So yeah, I just really wanted to say, some of the things that John said before the match, which obviously we couldn't say while Jack was in the chat and
Of
before the match
course.
had kicked off. But yeah, so John said he's hoping for some sort of miracle, and maybe the planetary conjunction is a sign. Um, and he added half a point would do. I mean, I think there's a psychological aspect to this, of course, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because back in the spring, he had those decent positions,
Mm,
and it ended up as 4-0. I think he was unlucky that it was 4-0.
I
I
think
I
so.
would say it should have at least been 3-1, or maybe even closer than that.
Yeah.
Um, so John's comment was I'd ideally like to face lots of the wild gambits Jack has in his locker in the opening,
Yep.
where I probably know what I'm doing, rather than later on where I lack the time or the talent to find the right moves and fall to pieces.
How very
And
self-deprecating. I
well,
mean, he's made the final two times in a row. I mean, he's
exactly.
obviously done well to
Yeah.
get through. Had a very dominant performance against Robert Taylor in the semi-finals. Three and a half
Yes.
half that match.
Yeah.
Went 3-0 up early, and came second in the Grand Prix in the autumn, whereas he came third in the Grand Prix in the
Yes.
spring. So actually, sort of improving on his tally.
Yeah.
Sort of getting a buy into the semi-finals.
Yeah.
Um, but as you say, there is the psychological thing when you play Jack. I'm sure we all have it, that we all know how strong Jack is, and we all know, yes, we may get our chances against Jack because he does play very quickly and plays quite wild. But capitalizing on those is
Mm.
another kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Certainly, you obviously played against Jack in the semis and managed to get a point against him in the
Yep.
third game and had chances in the fourth. You had your chances in the match,
Yep.
and 3-1 is definitely a very respectable score. And thank you for losing because it means you can commentate with me in the
Yeah.
final.
Yeah. I mean, I did see the win in the final game, but I thought I'd rather do this than.
Okay,
No,
how
no.
generous.
I mean, it's. I think back in the spring when we did the commentary, this was said of Jack back then that his style has become a lot more solid,
He
actually,
has.
and you can sort of see it in this sort of play at the moment. I mean, if you go back a couple of years, you obviously know Jack very well, as
Yeah,
as do I, and his style has sort of changed, I think, to something that is very, very difficult to meet because
yeah,
he can. If it goes into a wild tactical position, he'll get the better of you, and if it doesn't, he'll also get the better of you. So it's that positional play that I think is, um, certainly over the last kind of couple of years
yeah.
has really really kind of come out, and it's very hard to see a weakness. Um, so yeah, I mean, as you can see from this position, John's sort of kept it relatively level.
Yeah,
Um, and this is what we saw last time. But Jack plays well at all phases of the game. So
yeah, he does.
just because you have a level position, even if it's in an ending, he's not going to let you get away with a draw most of the
He's
time.
very, very capable of outplaying in end games. I mean, I know he's spoken a lot with Keith Arkle,
Yeah,
had a bit of coaching with Keith as well in
yeah,
terms of working on that side of his game because, yeah, that's the sort of style he does want to play. He wants to have that in his locker to be able to do that. And yeah, I mean, I think okay, I think his long play results certainly okay, maybe not this year because we've obviously all been playing online, but sort of prior to this year, his results were steadily getting better, and you saw more games where he was playing in a more steady way and outplaying even 2300, FIDE Masters, even
Can,
International
can, I-
Masters
can, I,
and
can I can I just jump in?
Grandmasters.
Just say how symmetrical is this position?
It's bonkers.
Just it wasn't symmetrical at all. And then if you move the black pawn to b6 and the white pawn to h2, that's it. Yeah,
It's it
just
is.
absolutely extraordinary that that's happened. But
You
yeah, I
see
mean,
this sometimes in the
yeah,
English though, don't you? These
you,
sort of
you do.
symmetrical
It's just
things.
everything sort of yeah. White's obviously made this decision. The rook belongs on c1,
Yeah.
which Black had decided earlier. So yeah, um, yeah. I mean, this is obviously it's obviously exactly the kind of position that I think Jack's after. There's
Yeah.
nothing crazy going on,
Nope.
um, and yeah, he's got his sort of chance to outplay John gradually. You know,
Yeah, I was wondering here actually whether Jack had a chance to potentially play a more ambitious move
yeah,
with e5 and potentially sort of grab the centre that way. It may be too early. I didn't really look too much into it because Jack obviously doesn't give you a lot of time to think about moves, which
no,
is going to be a key factor. We all know this with Jack. Although he has spent quite a bit of time for Jack,
yeah.
2.5 minutes already in this game. So
I would
John
also
obviously,
I would also say I like the pace at which John's playing as well.
yeah,
He's not hanging around too long,
yeah,
because obviously he knows that from last time that was the problem. If you get short time against Jack, it's curtains.
yeah. But of course, if you don't spend the time earlier on,
Yeah,
it could be curtains earlier because
yeah.
you've made some inaccuracies. So and you know that Jack is going to punish you for quite a lot of mistakes.
I'm just looking at how White wants to configure the queenside pieces. So because it feels like
Yeah,
this knight wants to come to c4.
yeah,
That seems like a really nice square for it, but b3 is hanging.
yeah. This knight on c3,
So
c5 doing a good job on b3.
so in order to get coordinated here, do we need to we need to do something about that, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, maybe even a move like bishop a1, which seems
I was going to suggest,
bad.
yeah, maybe bishop d4 or bishop, yeah, and then
Yeah.
try and play knight c4. Yeah, the engine didn't like the rook d1 move.
Yeah, I mean, it should be noted as well, this engine evaluation is pretty much just a blunder check for us, nothing more. It's not a particularly in-depth engine. It sometimes says this and it's, closer to equal or whatever. So we're not reading too much into it. But yeah, it feels like black probably does have a slight edge here just because black's knights are doing a lot better in the center and
There's
it's tying white
yeah,
down a little bit.
there's a really bonkers idea here
Go on.
that I've seen, which I don't know if it works or if why Jack's thinking about it now, and that is, can you take on e3?
So the idea is when you take back with the f pawn.
So then, well, I'm just thinking the combination of the queen coming, because queen g3 is quite hard to meet, isn't it? Can you take on apart from the knight? So can you take on e3?
Okay.
Knight e. I'm just thinking this. I'm just trying to get it to work because
Yeah. Of course, obviously the queen on g3 threatens checkmate on
yes,
g2
yeah,
because of the
and
bishop
come in
on
there,
b7 and attacking e3.
and attacking that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah. Certainly looks
This
dangerous.
this looks ridiculous, but Jack's stuck to against. So he's going against e3 in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it just doesn't work at all.
Maybe, maybe not. But let's say the engine has flipped there. I don't see an immediate refutation, but it's practically obviously very difficult on e3. It's a good spot there to look at these
Uh,
sacks, and because Jack spent the time there, he's a minute and a half on that move,
uh,
definitely looking at e3 and potentially how to break through there. Um, I feel like John might play a move like knight f1 and just, oh no, but then the b3 pawn drops. Ooh, this is tricky. This is tricky. Maybe a move like knight f3. There we
yeah,
go. With the idea of going bishop e5. Um, whilst obviously hitting the bishop on g5. So able to trade off. I think this has helped white a little bit.
it has. Yeah. Hmm.
Able to move that knight with tempo and move it. Okay, you probably did want it on c4, but it's obviously fine as a piece on at f3 for the time being. Just started to see the times on the other game tick down. So I think we should probably just quickly
Yep.
take a look and
Definitely.
have a look and see. This is the position we've reached. David has thrown the kitchen sink. There's not been too many moves, so let's actually just quickly jump back before
Yep.
we see the live action. Knight d7, we saw this idea of dropping the bishop back. The knight came to h5 to put pressure on the f4 knight, of course, forcing the trade on h5, and then knight takes h7.
Okay. Two can play at that game. Yeah.
Two can play at that game indeed, and queen h3, the trade of the knight and the bishop, but after g6, g4, that bishop is trapped, can't
Yep.
move, and we have reached this position here.
Yep.
Tim, help.
Yep. Help. I'll switch the game. Um, yes. What it felt that, well, certainly looking at the evaluation, it felt that black had something, better than getting
Better
the
than
bishop
this,
trapped
yeah.
this way. But even so, I mean, what are the options here? So
Yeah,
tactically, if so white's hitting f7 at the
yeah,
moment, right? So we don't really want to go rook g4, I
no,
guess, because we can just take on h5 if we want.
yeah.
We can go queen h5. So is a better idea just to move the king.
Yes, you can
Yeah,
still you can play either king h1, which is what
yeah.
David has done.
That's a problem because of f7, I think.
Yeah, I think you can take on f7, and then well, you can't take on e6. Don't forget the
Yeah,
checkmate there on h2, which I
yeah,
nearly
but
did.
yeah,
This king looks like it's in trouble. Feels like there should be something here.
yeah. I mean, if nothing else, you're sort of picking up the pawns, aren't you? So what's taking,
Trade and then take on b7.
and then you just go and
Yeah. I mean, the material is level, but because this rook is
Steve's
outlooked.
clock. Steve going to fit it
Steve's
in.
clock. Steve's
Steve's clock.
clock. Steve's
No,
clock. Tough position, but
it
yeah.
was. I quite
Look
like
at
Queen
these
H5.
pawns.
I think it's hard to play. Yeah, I mean,
Just completely
four
split,
isolated
right?
pawns. Yeah.
Um, and so, how many draws did they have between the two of them before this match? Was it? It was. Oops.
Well,
It was.
they're just getting to 2-2 in a different way.
They're going to two. Well, yeah. Well, we were thinking, oh, there's going to be lots of draws, and
Yeah.
then, we've had two absolutely crazy attacks, and we're 1-1 from two decisive results. Where they've only had six decisive results in what 22, 24 games. I mean, it's
Is it worth
not the
flicking
match we were
back to
expecting.
the
Yeah.
championship? Sort of,
Yes.
yeah, getting
Ooh.
getting tasty.
Yeah, very much so. Sorry, I was getting excited that we had two decisive results in
No,
the
no, 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 absolutely.
in the
Yeah,
major.
I think that is amazing that that's happened, and I wouldn't predict that, but
Yeah, but it's all to play for going into the Blitz games, and
yeah,
yeah, we'll obviously talk a little bit more about that when they return to match. They'll probably take a short break, but this is well, materially the material is level in this position. White's
and
obviously got two knights. Black's got the bishop and the knight.
so black can take the queens off now, right,
Yep.
and penetrate with the rook, and I sort of wonder whether Jack's gonna think that's enough.
Yep.
Um,
So you probably go king g1 here to defend the pawn. It's had to move away, but this b pawn's looking like the weakness. This rook's going to come to b2, and it's a question of whether white can do enough to create counterplay.
yeah, yeah, it feels like black's gonna just wheedle his way in now.
Mm.
He controls the only. I mean, what white's rook's obviously doing nothing at the moment.
Yeah,
But black's rook is the cause of his advantage here. So
yeah,
he just needs to get his pieces active. So yeah,
yeah.
not.
I'm not sure about this because I'm
I'm
not
not sure
even
about it
sure
because
black
yeah, it
wants to trade
lets the rook
this.
in. No,
Yeah.
precisely. Yeah,
Yes, okay, it would double the pawns, but actually this b pawn would actually be a strength, I think, rather than a weakness. Um,
I'm not sure what the alternative was there because it certainly the only I think what the plan there was to sort of take and then try and bring the knight in via c3,
by
but this isn't.
c3, yeah.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, and but look at the times. John has kept up all the way through here. Okay, he's still a little bit behind on the clock, but Jack down to 3 minutes. I don't recall Jack being this short of time. It's not short of time, but
No.
for Jack, I've not seen Jack use this much time within a game. So yeah, this is I think John's got good chances here to at least get a draw.
Yeah.
It's just a case of how do you get this rook active on a1?
And how do you get? Yeah, how do you?
You know,
Yes.
because it should be said that whilst Black has the worst pawn structure, three pawn islands to two, these pawns are doubled.
I was going to say the thing to probably avoid is getting forked. Yeah, I think you might have. I think Black had knight c3 there, which sort of forks the rook and knight, and you can't really go knight takes because pawn takes, and you're
Yes.
given
Yeah.
and the trick being Black's got knight e2 if White goes rook c1. So
Yep. We've got a self pin here on the knight on b5.
yeah,
Obviously, so it means that Black can go knight c3 right in
I'm
this
wondering.
position.
Yeah,
This just feels like possibly the wrong square for the rook.
and Johnson's last 10 seconds though. I think this
Yeah.
is.
It's going to be tricky. I mean, there's, obviously this knight's coming into a nice square. It'll eventually be parried with f3, but John's got to think what to do with the rook. The
Yeah.
time out there.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Definitely had Jack sort of, on I wouldn't say on the ropes, but certainly thinking a lot in that game. And yes, that's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
I think that's sort of what we expected, wasn't it? That John would put up some sort of stern resistance, and then but Jack would sort of keep pushing, and I think John needs to it's kind of doing much of the same, and
Yeah.
just hope that Jack makes an error at some point.
Yep. Well, I was going to comment that, yeah, but we were talking about how Jack was playing a more solid approach, and then he started with one knight c3, two knight f3, and
Van Geet opening.
trying to completely throw John out of any preparation he may have done, which I think is very much in Jack's style to
Yeah.
to do. Um,
Yes.
so we can actually take a little bit of stock because I think the other match is just taking a short break, as this match probably will after 1-1 as
Okay.
well. So we can stick on this game for now. But yeah, 1-0 to Jack. Obviously, we said John had an uphill struggle, an uphill climb to get there. But this evening, but he in that first game he showed that he can more than level Jack throughout the game. Just the time got him in the end.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I think, yeah, Jack was deliberately playing in a solid way and sort of holding back slightly. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, I think this is probably Jack's probably trying to maximise his chance of winning 4-0, I suppose.
yeah.
You could
Well,
sort of view it that way. So avoid any mistakes
yeah,
or crazy tactical situations. And
yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting choice of opening.
Well, I was going to say he's made an interesting choice, and then it's transposed into a Sicilian. Unfortunately, chess.com beat me to saying it because it's changed up in the top right by the notation.
Okay.
But yeah, I was going to say this is transposed into a mainline Sicilian Scheveningen, which Jack will have oodles of knowledge about, inputting tens of thousands of games. He will have gone through these sort of openings, this sort of thing
Yeah.
that Jack has a lot of knowledge of, even if he doesn't particularly play it himself all the time, but he does play Open Sicilians because he's played it against me a lot. And I feel like Jack is very much in his element here, playing very quickly in a position that is probably fairly familiar to him. Although it should be said that John's probably familiar with this sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Is this considered like I mean, presumably this is still a theoretical position. Is this considered to be absolutely fine for black, or is it?
I mean, I'm not sure about this h3 move, if I'm honest. It feels a little bit slow. Usually in the Scheveningen, you go sort of g4 straight away and play g4, g5 in some structures. I don't know the theory particularly well. I think the Scheveningen used to be a lot more popular back in the 70s and 80s. It used to be sort of a one of the main lines at the highest level. I think it's dropped off in popularity for the Najdorf and the Sveshnikov now. But I think it went off being popular because White usually sort of drummed up a big attack. But here, to me, I mean, the engine seems to have just stuck on
Yeah.
here. I don't believe the engine here. I feel like it's just got stuck. It feels fairly level to me because White hasn't got anything going straight away, and Black hasn't committed his king. Probably
Mm.
has to fairly soon. Otherwise, White may be able to get e5 in and start opening things up.
Yep.
But I'd probably take Black here. But then I'm a Sicilian player myself, and it feels like Black can get good counterplay here on the
Yeah.
queen side.
Yeah. So he has castle king side.
Mm,
Yeah. So Jack's going for the.
yeah. I
So
really
wait,
don't believe this engine.
what's the idea? What there must be some.
So the
There must be
idea is,
some.
I mean, Black's going to play e5 at some point.
Yeah.
E5 at some point,
Wait.
utilize the c file, put pressure down the c line, play b4 at the right moment as well.
Oh,
And
what is going on here? They're both attacked each other's knights, and the
yeah,
computer really likes black. So
yeah.
what's going on?
Um,
I mean, black's got a retreat square, or a couple of
yeah.
retreat squares. White has.
Has got a4 and b1.
Is A4 problematic though? Isn't it getting? I
How
thought it
do
had
you
to
win
go.
it? Can you go queen a5 here?
Yeah, I mean, you're already attacking it once.
Yeah.
What's
And
the?
the thing is, this g pawn's come up the board, but
Yeah,
White hasn't got the resources to the pieces on that side of the board to attack it straight away.
that's amazing. I think knight A4 when you haven't got any retreat squares, you have to. I would say you have to think about it very carefully without
Yeah,
playing it, and Jack's done it straight away.
straight away. Yeah.
So what's
Well, John's probably thinking, what?
he's done
Well,
it? He's done it. Yeah. Well, John's
is it a
playing
Christmas
3
miracle? Is probably thinking. Thank you very much. But Black will have to be careful because in these
course,
sorts of
of course.
positions, White can drum up kingside play, seemingly out of nowhere. It's really annoying in the Sicilian, just deciding to just start hacking the f pawn up the board. This bishop then does
Yeah.
something, but here it comes.
He can be. He's not going to have a knight. He's not going to have a light square bishop because that's going to get traded because
Yeah,
black can force that trade.
it's just a piece up, isn't it?
Just a piece.
It's just a piece. And
This
black.
attack can't be worth more than a pawn,
Well,
right?
of course, of course. I'm not claiming that White
Yeah.
is has got compensation here, but it's definitely some pressure. And
Wow.
this is the thing with Jack that we mentioned earlier, that yes, you can get chances out of him, but he still wins games even when in very bad positions, because there is this psychological thing
Yeah.
against him. I really like this move C takes, by the way. It sort of is quite a normal way of playing it. It slows down any attack with the A pawn coming forwards.
Yeah.
It's generally quite a good way, because then you can take with the B pawn and then play B3 and defend along the second. But a
I bet
piece
John.
down, it's a bit different.
Yeah. I bet John can't believe what's going on here.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course, and still got 5 minutes to try and convert this. Obviously, the time is going to be the thing to watch out for, and
So
this kingside play.
it's funny, isn't it, when you're in one of these positions because you part of you wants to try and get the pieces off. So, for example, trading queens
Yeah,
or just sort of simplify where you can.
yeah.
I like this move E5.
Yes, I was going to suggest either e5 or d5. You've got to continue it's no good having the extra pieces if you don't use them, and you need to have it fairly open to be able to utilize the extra piece. Um,
Our other game has started, by the way,
yes,
but
I've just
that's
seen that. I'll just open that up on my thing, but I will
yeah, perfect. Yeah,
keep
no,
it on this
yeah,
game between Jack and John, and we will hop over to the other match,
yeah,
because 1-1 would be very
yeah,
exciting going into the blitz portion, which anything can happen, and John's now looking to trade the queens, which Jack won't oblige.
yeah. Yeah, he obviously can't. He's kind of yeah, he's trying to pick the one that's not just completely losing. But
Of
if
course,
sort of it feels like Black's going to double up, and I'm not worried about this attack at all, really. Um,
I'm not yet, but I always get a little bit paranoid.
okay, all right.
But that's me. That's me. I think,
Yeah,
especially
yes,
against somebody a lot stronger than me, I'd certainly be quite nervous in this
yeah,
in this position. If you see the opportunity, it's almost seeing the finishing line before you're even round the final bend,
yeah,
right? And it's that danger that you trip over yourself because you forget you've got to actually make that final turn.
yeah,
That's probably one of
yeah.
the worst analogies I've ever made, but you'll have to live with it.
It's it's probably not even in the top 10, Tom. Yeah, I
Cheers,
mean
Tim.
here, like White's going to be playing. So I mean, clearly H6 gets met by G6
Yes.
and just seal it up. G6. What does Black do to G6? I guess take with.
I mean, I would probably take with the f pawn.
And John, please don't take with the rook because C8's hanging. Good.
There we
That's good.
go. That was dangerous.
G6. So he's played
This is crucial.
G6.
I think I go h6 in this position. I
You
think.
can go H6.
I think I go
Can
h6
we not counter attack here?
with a move like
Well, I was thinking if we get the queen to C2, then it's going to be mate, isn't it, on the back rank? So
so play a move like queen e2.
Queen E2, something
Yeah,
like that.
because then you can obviously play queen c2 and queen c1, and you get this sacrifice to the back rank mate.
Yeah, it sort of feels like he's
He's
done it.
played it. He's
He's
played
done it.
it. Excellent
I,
move.
I
Also
think
hitting e4. Also hitting e4.
yes.
And I think the important thing is if white takes either pawn, you just play king f8 here.
Yeah,
You just step out of the
yeah.
way. He's played it. Excellent.
And that white pawn on F7 is sort of the best possible defender.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
It's an excellent defender, and John's now looking to see if there's any checkmate, any
Yeah.
value in playing queen takes e4 first, or just
Yep.
trade the queens. Um, he's just trying to work out the best way, but he's played this very well, and now rook c2, I assume
Yeah.
is. I mean, there's probably loads of ways of winning it, but I think against somebody that you're an underdog against, you always take that little bit extra time, and when you've got it, 3 and a bit minutes left,
Yep.
use it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's quite a nice move because you've got this mate threat. So that's
yeah. So
Forcing the queen to the back rank. Yeah.
forcing the queen to the back rank, and I mean, I'd even look at a move like bishop g5
I
to,
was just saying that another piece on c1, and that means everything's coming off, right?
yeah,
Unless, yeah,
yeah.
there's just no choice, right?
Be no way to stop just rook c1. I mean, maybe the king can go back to b1, but
Yeah.
then you can even just take everything off and go
Yeah.
into the king and pawn ending, right? Which would, well, I mean, you don't need to do that clearly, but
Yeah.
John's playing it just solid with bishop f6, which is absolutely fine.
Yep.
I think this is, I mean, barring a Christmas miracle for Jack, this looks like
Yeah.
1-1.
It does. I mean, yeah. I'm just sort of looking at the where we are with the other one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was just gonna round this one off. I think a move like Queen d2 here, and then possibly playing e4 and now also attacking
The
b2.
interesting thing about the other game, incidentally, I don't know if it might
I
be
haven't.
worth
I was gonna.
just flick to it
Yeah,
briefly.
let's have a look.
Does this look familiar?
It does look familiar.
Very, yeah.
And so Steve has played the Caracan. Of course, they're playing with the same colours as they did in game
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
And yeah, another gambit. Just quickly flick through again. Exactly the same moves. The trade on f4, black castling. Yeah, this is the same. This is the same, but Queen c7 is a deviation, I believe,
Yeah.
because black's traded on f4 earlier. I think is important to say,
Yeah.
which is what we were saying. I think in commentary.
That's a win for John.
It is rook c2 and a resignation.
And this idea of piling up on the bishop f6 is just a very safe move, isn't it? And
Very
this,
safe move.
yeah.
Very nice. Well
yeah, I mean,
played.
yeah.
Game on. Game
Game
on. John said half a point would be enough. Well, he's got a whole point, and it's going to go to all 4 games, which is what you predicted early on. I said 3-1, didn't I? I didn't actually write it down.
You did.
Said
And
3-1.
you might still be right, but
Of course.
I just think, yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens in the shorter games because being even faster, they're even more in Jack's favour, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll see.
we will see as we watch the other match. Oh god, my brain stopped.
That's all right.
Just decided to turn off for a little bit after that game. I'm not sure why.
No.
A game match between David Holmes, Steve Dean. Both matches finally poised at 1-1 as we enter the blitz portion, which is excellent to see. It's excellent to see them being both really competitive.
Yeah. There's actually, I think what David's looking at here is whether there's any weird discoveries on the queen. And so, for example, at the moment, you can't take on f6 because just queen takes queen. Yeah. But there, I was just thinking it's probably on here. He's just played rook f1. That makes sense. But there's like this bonkers idea of taking on e6.
Yeah. And then if you take back,
then if you take, you can take on f6 because then you're taking on f8 with check.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. And I think it only wins the pawn.
But that gets the pawn back, right?
But that's probably the saying that in this position, there's quite a lot of pressure for white, isn't there? So
yeah,
and that line sort of cashes everything in.
It's an excellent spot, by the way, Tim.
Yeah,
it's an excellent spot on e6.
Well, I mean, it's tactics, isn't it? It's tactic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you've got to see it.
In these positions where you've got an undefended queen, that's going to be the tactical motif. And
yes,
the classic one is you move the rook away with check. With check, that's the thing. Or you take something, yeah, and for some reason, if black trades queens, you take something else, and that's sort of the second type there, I suppose.
So this is still on, right? It's still on to play knight takes e6.
Think so.
Yeah, obviously there's a bit more pressure on the centre. Like black's going to get a little bit.
It does mean everything comes off, doesn't it? So knight. And there's no tricks. You've always got to check because especially when it looks like you're doing something so crazy, you've got to check. There's no tricks, right?
Yeah.
So knight e6 is forking, so you have to take.
Yeah. So then you take on f6.
You can't take. Just always worth checking. You can't take on f6. You just take on c7, and there's no back rank mate or anything like that. Nope. So yeah, it sort of feels like black has to take on g3, take on f8, take on f8, and so literally everything's coming off. And we're getting same coloured bishop ending.
Yeah. I have a feeling that David's
This
just
is
not seen this idea,
that's yeah,
which is perfectly understandable, especially given the times. But obviously, what we've ended up in is a position where Steve is a pawn up, and
yeah.
in a position where White has a little bit of kingside pressure, but
Mm,
with consolidating play, I don't think there's not going to be huge amounts of compensation.
yeah,
Now Black looking to get active with this rook,
yeah,
try and infiltrate on d2 perhaps.
yeah.
Yeah, the other Blitz games have just begun as well. The match between Jack and John, they have gone straight into it. They can't wait to play their Blitz games, so they are in the
The engine really
first.
doesn't like this H4 move. The bar armor went down massively. I wonder
Yeah,
what.
well, I don't think it does
It's
achieves a
just
lot,
better.
right?
It's just yeah, yeah.
It's not threatening h5 particularly. Um,
No.
I mean, I think White will play it at some point, if not now, very soon. Now that Steve's time is obviously very short, so there may be some practical difficulties in sort of working out how best to defend. But
Yeah.
yeah, after h4, you just play knight takes h5, and if White trades, this bishop's just going to come back to g6 and just sit and just defend the
He has
h pawn
played it because he might have which
because it's
yeah
forking here, so you've got to trade.
this is no good, is it?
No, you've got to trade, and the thing is that the bishop's just going to sit on g6, and this knight is the piece that is attacking both these the light squares. But Black's got this light squared bishop going to be on an ideal square on g6 to defend everything.
Yeah, and that bishop, I think we had it in some of the games in previous weeks. This bishop on g6,
Yeah,
can can't be dislodged by anything,
no,
apart from White rerouting the knight to eventually take it, and that's in. He's obviously quite a long way from doing that, I think.
yeah, and this is
Yeah, draw by agreement.
what? Sorry, I mean
Wow, who offered the draw? Did it say?
it didn't say. I'm ass- I would assume White did. That's incredible. I
It's a
mean,
great.
okay, the time.
It's a fantastic draw offer
Yeah,
actually,
I mean,
because it's been taken. But
well, yeah, I mean, because Black can just play Queen takes a2 here at worst, right?
yeah,
Um,
move the
and
queens.
b2 pawns up. I mean, okay, Steve's probably thinking he's short of time. A draw takes him into a game with White going into the last, but I think you've got to play this on as Black. You have to play this on. You're a pawn up, possibly two. You've wanted an end game. You know that's been the strategy coming in. This is an ideal end game. I think this is
There's
a
yeah,
trick missed here.
it is, yeah,
As Steve says in the chat, no time left, so it was the time that was the
yeah,
factor.
yeah.
Let's jump
It
over to the other match just on the screens as
there was
we.
actually I was just sort of trying to scope out that final position.
Yeah,
Um, there's actually I think you're right about just taking on A2 something like that. It sort of feels like White has pressure, but
yeah. There's
there's nothing concrete.
no.
Maybe it just looks scary.
Now I've come back to this Blitz game. The engine has is giving this in favor of Black, in favor of John. Um, it is a Dutch defense, so John has played his usual Dutch and has
Uh,
reached this quite frankly silly position that I don't really understand what's going on.
no,
And
no,
the
it's been
engine's dropped back. Was there must have been some
must have
tactic here
been.
of some sort
Yeah,
that
yeah. So if knight f6 isn't correct, so I mean, it's
mm,
saying knight f6 isn't the idea.
yeah. Then what? Go
Oh,
on.
okay. So the knight on e5 is only defended by the pawn and the bishop. So it's only just defended enough.
Yeah.
So if you take on d4,
Yep. This pawn's pinned on c3. So you got
that pawn's pinned. So if you take the knight, you can take on e5, I guess. Yeah,
yeah.
that's causing a bit of a mess. So that looks fine. And if you take the other way,
So with the e pawn here.
which is the only other move,
Yeah.
what's the idea then? Can you take on g4? Because f4 is then hanging in
Oh
that line.
goodness, that's That's
That's
tremendous.
almost impossible to see, though,
That's
right?
tremendously difficult. I mean,
I
this
mean,
is the problem with all
knight
these.
f6 is just. I mean,
Yeah, it's
like
very natural, clearly.
Jack clearly didn't see it. John clearly didn't see it
No,
in this thing, but just alerted to there being something there by. Yeah, it's
by
kind of
the
easy.
engine, right?
If you've got an evaluation bar, that'd be.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's different playing chess and actually doing tactics puzzles, because in tactics puzzles you know you need to look for something, whereas in chess you don't have that clue. It doesn't have a big light bulb that goes ding 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 ding. Find the tactic. And
I'm gonna actually propose a new variant of chess.
oh dear.
It's the first time we've heard it, and obviously you don't get an engine to help you. That'd be ridiculous.
Okay.
But normal chess, but after you play each move, you see the evaluation bar.
Right. Good. As the engine bar has now flicked to
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you see,
white,
yeah.
because what am I missing?
So I haven't caught it. Sorry.
Oh, you can take on d5, of course. My bad.
D5.
Yeah, often that's a blunder, unfortunately. And after this move, you can still take on d5.
What a mess.
Whoops.
It's equal. Jack's 2 pawns up now, right? And the rook's hanging.
The
Yeah.
rook's hanging in the corner. Whoops.
Yep.
That's a blunder. What a chart. I mean, that's a really difficult tactic for what it's worth. That one we were highlighting earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
For John to spot. But yeah, that turned around very quickly, unfortunately for John. Just an oversight with the loose pawn on d5, and Jack suddenly very quickly regains the lead after that drop of a point in game two. But 2-1 up. John now needing to win this game to take this to tie breaks. And yeah, going to be tough, but it's definitely possible. We've seen him win one game. It's possible to win another.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm. And we have a Caracan English again, but certainly not as symmetrical, this one. Black taking on c4 instead of it sort of locking up on the queen side. So a different position to the game they played in game one.
Yeah. And I guess you have to remember in the other match,
Yep.
it 1.5 apiece at the moment. So
Yeah.
that's the critical.
Well, let's take a look and see what's going on here. We had a London to the surprise of no one, but it was different to the first game, where Black went an early Queen b6, c6, and Queen b6. I have seen this before, but it's certainly unorthodox, judging by the opening name there. But this could be the surprise that David was talking about. Just trying to throw off, and we have this Queen b3, Queen b6 that we've seen time and time again over the course of the autumn tournaments. And just quickly skipping through the moves, some standard developing moves, both sides casting the trades of queens.
Yep.
And after the trade of queens, doesn't mind opening up the H file. No real attack. d5, level, very level.
Yeah, it's probably worth just quickly commenting on this knight to h5 maneuver, because we saw it last week in the mini Swiss.
Yeah.
And it's quite, if you are sort of struggling for how to play against the London as Black, we saw Alex deploy this idea last week. This idea of sort of picking up this London bishop is I think quite a good one. And obviously what was chosen in the game, it drops back to g3, and you've traded knight for bishop, and
it's one of the things in the London that actually your London bishop can be a strength or a weakness depending on how the game goes. You've got to be a bit careful, but obviously in this case it's been traded off, and Black now pushing forwards in the centre with e5, trying to get active. But the big question, as always with these structures of Black, is what is this bishop on c8 doing? Where does it need to go? Because always in these games, I have it time and time again, once you've fianchettoed on the king side, this bishop doesn't necessarily have a good home for quite a while.
Yeah, and for that reason, I mean, it sort of feels like Black should claim the space here, which he has done.
Yeah.
And then move the knight, develop the bishop.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously like f5, but I always play f5.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
maybe
not.
it's blocking the bishop there. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily because it's an aggressive move f5. It's just to control the light squares, right? Of
Yeah,
course, to control this g4 square. You could probably play h5 here
h5.
and probably does the
H5
same job.
H5 is probably better, isn't it? With the idea of playing H5 and knight F6 to back it up,
Yep.
and you've got
Yeah.
a nice control over G4.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think because black's gained this space, it's actually white's got a fairly tricky job trying to work out where his pieces go. Like, where's this knight going? It's probably going to support a push of c4, but where does this knight on h2 go? Okay, it can go to f1, but where's
Yeah,
it going from there? It's kind of awkward, really.
yeah. Knight B6 seems a bit of an unusual decision, but I can understand it.
Yeah, well, it's just trying to get this bishop out, isn't it, and
Yeah,
connect the rooks. But obviously, there's a bit of struggle that black has to deal with. Is black probably has to play a6 at some point too,
yep,
because this a file is open. Um, Ocelot in the chat's asking why did white castle? Why didn't white leave the rook on the h file? I think that's reasonable. I think it's mostly just a king safety thing. You
yeah,
don't want black to sort of open up the center of the board and potentially your king gets caught in front, with the bishop pinned. And this h file isn't going to achieve huge amounts just because of the fianchetto structure, and
yeah.
there's no
And
queens on the board.
yeah, queens are off here. There's no dark squared bishop to remove black's dark squared bishop.
Yep.
So yeah, I think white's a long way away from achieving anything on the H file. And I mean, it's kind of a funny position, right? Because he had both rook pawns had captured
Yeah.
towards the center, so he had
Yeah.
both. He had the choice of the A file or H file. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
here
it's
we
good. It is a good question though. I mean,
no, of course.
it's a tricky.
It's a tricky balance to get right sometimes because it is important to keep your pieces active, but I think people there's a lot of games I've seen that is like the king safety, even in these sort of middle games without queens, can still be a big factor,
Yeah.
and something to watch out for. Even if you don't think it's going to get checkmated, it can just get you into a little bit of trouble. And here we see, well, a very positional game here, which I'm sure Steve is rubbing his hands together.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I'd be rubbing my hands together in terms of the position he's got, because I don't actually see particularly great squares. Although this knight could be coming to c5, put pressure on b7.
I mean, we probably should keep an eye on the other match as well. We obviously
Yep.
John's down to sort of a minute,
Yeah,
and a bit now.
it's going to be tricky to keep hold of both of them, but
Of course, yeah,
we will. Well, let's leave this because this is
of
probably not going to
course.
end with it unless it's agreed a draw. We're not going to see that ending anytime soon. It's
Yep.
only 15 moves played. We have had another English. I know
Yep.
we've already covered the opening of that one, but
Yep.
again, a fine position, a playable position for John here.
Yep.
Nice knight on e5 here. Probably gets supported with f4, I would say.
Yep.
Not sure what else it's doing, unfortunately. And then these rooks in the center are going to do well. Black will have time to castle kingside to get out of any sort of kingside problem, king safety problems.
Exactly. Yeah. It feels like there's a lot of. I mean, obviously it's a relatively short time control.
Yeah.
What should White be sort of angling at here? I think I'd be tempted to take off the knight.
Yeah, I think
see,
so.
and then try and claim the space, especially when you're short of time in this
Yeah.
sort of position.
Well, this is going to be the crucial factor, isn't it? In that White has got 36 seconds left. I would have been tempted, as you say, to trade the knights there and try and utilize the two bishops later down the line. Use that as a long term.
If we can flick to the other game, Tom. It's
yeah, we can.
Bouncing around. Sorry, I know we're flicking a lot.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But,
Gashead.
it's 5 seconds left.
Yeah.
And I think Steve might have missed a detail there, but we're.
Yeah,
He's just got in. Had 0.3 seconds left when he made the move because it's 5-2.
He's got to play quickly.
He's got to play quickly.
Has it ended? It has ended. That is it. An unfortunate end to the match. Two and a half, one and a half to Steve is the
It's
final score.
it's a very very difficult position for Black this though at this
Yeah,
point.
really tough.
Um, yeah,
Really, really
so
tough.
he won this pawn. We can kind of go back up maybe afterwards, but
Yeah,
Black's lost this pawn with these sort of invading knights, and
yeah,
yeah, we can look at that in a moment. But
yeah,
it's definitely advantage White here, and he's got a minute to sort of figure out how to maneuver. It's a
exactly.
very hard position to play for Black, actually. I think.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Steve. I will give you your trophy
Yeah.
after this match because I don't want to miss much of the action when John is down to 10 seconds. But many congratulations to Steve there. Winner of the
Well
Autumn
done,
Mini
Steve.
Swiss,
Well
winner of the Autumn Grand Prix. I mean, we sort of just have to ban you from all these tournaments, I think, Steve. You just turn up with the London and win all win all the virtual trophies. It's no tremendous performance and many congratulations, commiserations to David Holmes, great performance, and Jack has won now on time in this position, which is again very unfortunate. But this is what the short time controls can do. It puts you under a lot of pressure.
and it was 3-1.
It was
You
three
were right.
one, and it
Yeah,
was two and a half, one and a half to Steve.
yeah. Well done.
I sort of called both of them, I'm afraid. But many
Yeah.
congratulations to Jack there. A good performance. John put up a tremendous fight, though. Scoring the point in game two, having positions in, having playable positions in all the games, quite honestly, and keeping it competitive all the way through. And congratulations to John and David for second places. And let's get some trophies up. Jack has entered the chat, so Jack's trophy
Well,
gets put onto the stream. Another virtual trophy to go in the virtual cabinet. Um, so many congratulations to Jack, and another autumn trophy for Steve Dean. He may recognise the trophy. It's honestly it's a different trophy. It's definitely not the same trophy that you got a week and a bit ago. We promise you. Um, many congratulations to Steve and Jack. And what a great way to end the year on for Devon Chess.
absolutely,
It's been
absolutely.
a strange year, but we've had a hell of a lot of online chess, and I think it's been tremendous from all the players that have got involved, and obviously everything that's come along with it as well.
I don't know if we've got a couple of minutes just to, or a minute or so to have a look at just the end of Steve's game because I think we were sort of flicking between them, didn't we? And it all happened very quickly.
I was
So
trying to
before we
be
sort of wind up,
nice and calm, and all you guys like, can we do the chess again? Can we do the? Are people here for the chess, or are they here for us? No, definitely for the chess, right? Let's drop back. Um, right, so we left it when the knight dropped back to d7,
yeah.
and then the invading knights on a5 and c5. Whereabouts you want to go? Take us through it, Tim. 'Cause you may have had a
Uh,
look at it.
no, so yeah, these. I think it was a little bit before this, wasn't it? When should we start from this position?
This is the position we're on.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, excellent. So these sort of knights have invaded, haven't they, to get to these sort of prominent positions,
Yep.
and with this sort of potential threat of just chopping off on b7, and then of course like the house caves in because a6 is going to drop and so on and
Yep.
so forth. And unfortunately, black is not going to be able to play b6 because c6 is hanging, and that's going to fork the rooks. So that's
Yep.
probably not too clever either.
No.
So black took on c5,
Yep.
and White played this natural move of taking back with a B pawn, which
Yep.
is obviously the right thing to sort of keep the weakness there.
Yep.
And I think what happened is that White managed to maneuver the rook to pin the pawn, and it all happened quite quickly. But we'll
Yeah.
see here: Bishop f6, Rook a3,
Rook d7.
Rook
Now rook
d7, and now
b3.
Rook b3. And so now White is hitting the pawn twice,
Yeah.
uh, but he's also threatening to take on c6
Yeah, because this rook on
because of
d8
this
is.
pin.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if Black's rook wasn't in the way, maybe there'd be another defense to bring the
Yeah.
bishop back or something. But the way it turned out, c6 dropped,
Yeah.
and then if we just sort of have a look at the last few
Yeah.
moves,
Rook c8, knight b4,
the knight drops back. Yeah,
and then bishop just playing e2, nice and solid. a5, knight drops back,
yeah,
is going to come round to b5 and
yeah,
sit quite nicely there. And as you say, it's going to be tricky for black to play. White's just got a pawn up. got the time to consolidate that extra pawn and try and find a way to convert it into a win.
So although David, it kind of does feel unfortunate sometimes when when it is a loss on time and it gets settled that
Yeah.
way. I think, and the bar sort of indicates this. I think Black is, so even if it was level time, I think Black would have a hard time defending this.
Yes.
I think Steve's, the grind is on here, and
Yeah.
this could be another 40 or 50 moves, but he's gonna sort of bring home the point with a high probability here. I think.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of pluses in the position for White.
Yeah. And three decisive games in the match, which
Yeah.
was teed up to be the draw fest of the year, but we didn't quite get there. We didn't quite get there.
We didn't
We
get
did
there.
get one draw. We did
Yeah,
get one draw,
yeah.
and yeah, well, those were two excellent matches. No tie
Really
breaks.
good.
We may get some tie breaks in the Grand Prix at some point, Tim. We've had
That'll,
two iterations of it, and yet to get a
yeah.
tie break in any of the quarterfinals, semi-finals, or finals. But we'll have to run more mini Swisses where we get more drama in the tie breaks. Um, Not that
Exactly.
these matches weren't full of drama. Like there was a lot in them, and a great way to end off the year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Many thanks, Tim, for joining us. And it should be said that Tim is the one that has put all of these tournaments on. Like he's organised it all. He set up the club back in March. Has done a hell of a lot of work. So I speak on behalf of all the players. Thank you for all the hard work
No
you've
problem.
done to get us through what's been a very weird year. And
It
yeah,
it has. It's been great watching people play, and
mm,
I think online chess is different to over the board chess.
yeah,
And I think maybe before this year, there were a lot of people who didn't play it, and yeah, I think it's not something that's for everyone,
no,
and but we try and put on enough events, different time controls and things that it's interesting for people,
yeah,
and yeah, hopefully we'll be doing some more of these events and some new ideas as well come the new year. So
yeah,
fingers crossed things will be back to normal soon, but
yeah.
until they are, we'll keep doing stuff.
Until they are, you'll have to put up with us commentating on your
Yeah,
games.
that's it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but that is it for 2020 from Devon Chess. I think we may have the Mellow Monday on Monday,
Yeah,
just a couple of the normal tournaments, but that will be it from the commentary team, if you want to call us that. But fear not, we will be back in 2021 with some more events coming up, as long as they need to be going. And yeah, if you're not part of if you've found the stream through whatever means and you aren't part of the Devon Chess Club on chess.com, feel free to join. We're all friends here. If you've joined the stream,
even
you're
if you're from outside Devon, so
yes, that's what
there's
I mean. Yeah,
yeah, there's
friends of Devon as well,
open
more
to
than
all.
welcome. So please do apply and come along and play in our events, and maybe you could be commentated on by two very average chess players. Um,
That's right. And
oh
yeah,
dear.
and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Of
Hope you have
course.
a fantastic break, and yeah, we'll be back in. We'll sort of keep running the tournaments through the break,
Yeah.
but yeah, there'll be another Grand Prix, no doubt, and a mini
Yeah.
Swiss
Mini
come January.
Swiss.
Yeah,
Yeah, just watch out for your emails on the mailing list that Tim sends out, and we'll put everything there. If you've missed any of the streams, I can see that you can go to the YouTube channel, which I'm just typing into the chat now. So if you missed any of the streams, even way back in the spring, they've all been put up on the YouTube channel. Same name as this Twitch channel, so you can always go over there and take a look if you have a spare couple of hours over Christmas and you're particularly interested in rewatching some of the action that's happened over the course of the year. Any
brilliant.
final words, Tim, before we end 2020 on this excellent note?
I'd say thank you to everyone for supporting the club, and hope you've enjoyed the tournaments and the coverage that we've been doing. And if you have any thoughts or ideas about things we could run in the new year, please just get in touch.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Tim, and thanks everyone for joining us live on the broadcast, and also if you're watching on the videos afterwards. And yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in 2021.